everybody, it's Emma and welcome to Vlogmas Day 10. Today I'm going to be doing my annual end of year reading wrap up. I'm going to be going through all of the books I read this year, answering a couple prompts that were inspired both by the video I did last year and then whatever video inspired that one. I took questions from both, as well as just some random ones that I wanted to ask. I will tell you ahead of time that you're probably going to hear the same answers come up a lot because I read less books than I did last year, so I did shorten the amount of prompts that I'm answering, so every book gets covered at least once, but you're not like hearing the same name 100 times. And also like some of the questions I just couldn't answer because I didn't have a book that fit it, so a little bit different than last year, but still reviewing the year and then also talking a little bit about what I hope to accomplish in 2025 as far as reading goes. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so first I'm going to start off with kind of a general review of the past year for me as far as reading goes. And if you see me looking at my phone, it's because I got all of the info here summarized in a little note form. But overall, I read 13 books this year, which is actually really cool because my goal for the year was 12. And for the first time, and as long as I can remember, that means I surpassed my reading goal, which is actually pretty cool considering a few weeks ago I didn't think I was gonna hit it at all. But yeah, 13 books total, 2024 as of the time of this filming. The likelihood that I'm gonna finish another book before the new year is very little, but never zero. I met most of my goals for the year as well. The only one that I didn't really fulfill was I wanted to fill my reading challenge of 12 books with all new books that I hadn't read yet. And I forget what the actual number is, but I think I got about halfway there with that. So I read about 6 new books, and then the rest was rereads, books that I had read before, which I don't hate. Like, I reread those books for a reason, right? I love them. But it is a little sad that I didn't get to fulfill reading 12 new books. So not mad about it, but that is something I'm going to try to do again in the new year. I did get pretty lucky though as far as reading picks goes because my average rating for 2024 was 4.1 stars. Now that is going to be slightly affected by the fact that I reread books that I love, so it got dragged up a bit. But even considering, I read some pretty good books this year, so I'm really happy about that. And then Goodreads is also saying my average book length was 383 pages, which also feels pretty accurate. I read some long books, or at least that's long to me. Alright, now I'm going to move on to some of the prompts I chose for this video. Starting out pretty plain, pretty simple. I tried to pick my favorite book of the year, which was pretty hard because like I said, I read some pretty good books this year. But I did put the parameter in my mind that I couldn't pick a reread because I'm biased towards those because I already know I love them. So just out of the new books I read, I picked Solitaire by Alice Oseman. This is part of the Heartstopper world that I know and love. And I had been wanting to read this book for a while, but I didn't really know how to approach it until one day this summer I just decided to start reading it and like get over it and just read it. It really did become one of my favorites very quickly, and I really want to reread it, honestly. I talked a little bit about this book in my bookshelf tour. I found myself relating a lot to what was being told in this story. I loved the way that Tori's, the main character's story, was explored in a unique way that also intertwined with what we know from Heartstopper. And it felt just like a really grounded story, if that makes sense. And I remember it taking me a while to read because sometimes it was a little heavy. It was totally worth getting through it. It was one of those books that I found myself just wanting to keep reading. Like, I specifically remember I took this book to the beach one day during the summer and I kept like getting annoyed when I had to get up and move because I just wanted to keep reading it. So I think it's my favorite just because of how I felt while reading it and how much it stayed with me and how much I continued to just keep wanting to read it. My longest book of the year, this kind of actually goes back to the stats part of this video, was Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. This was also a book that I kind of procrastinated reading for a very long time. I also think I was nervous because I love The Raven Cycle, and so I was kind of worried about like adding on to something that I already know I love, because I knew that the story goes down another avenue with one of the characters, or containing one of the characters, and I was kind of worried that it was gonna like ruin what I already knew, which is kind of silly in hindsight because I ended up liking it. At the same time, I'm kind of glad I read it when I did because I ended up going through it so fast at a time when I was struggling to find something that I enjoyed reading. So I read this on audiobook as well as my physical copy. But yeah, this was my longest book at, what did I say? 472 pages. So I will continue being stubborn and trying to hold out to read the rest of the trilogy, but overall I liked it. Not as much as The Raven Cycle, but it was pretty good. On the same line, my shortest book was We Are Okay by Nina LaCour, and this was 236 pages. This is one of those books that felt really, really short, but kind of in the best way. Like, it was the perfect size for what it's talking about. This book really surprised me, which is funny because I didn't put it as the book that surprised me the most prompt. But anyway, the description on the back I remember thinking was so vague. When I was looking at it in the store, I really couldn't decide if I was gonna like it or not. So I looked at the length and was like, well, it looks like it's won a bunch of awards. People tend to like it, so I might as well try it. And this is one of the very few books I've stayed up like nearly all night wanting to finish. I don't remember a lot about the plot itself, but I remember it feeling very different from things that I read before, and it felt very deep and like resonant, if that makes sense. I don't even know if that's a word. And kind of like Solitaire, it hit me really hard, and even if I didn't necessarily relate to it at certain points, I felt like I could because of the way that it was written. It didn't go the way that I thought it would, but I still really enjoyed it, and is a book that I will be able to go back to happily in the future. Okay, my highest rated book of the year was The Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan, which I was kind of surprised at. It was overall rated 4.3 on Goodreads. This book in particular was kind of interesting to read because on the one hand, I was really excited to get new Percy Jackson content with Percy, Annabeth, and Grover and see where they go next. But on the other hand, I was intensely aware that I had kind of grown out of the age group that Percy Jackson is written for. I know that it's intended for all audiences, but the way that it's written and the language it uses, I think is suited for someone a little bit younger than me. So I was like, yes, I love it as a Percy Jackson book, but as a book itself, I was like, it was good, but like not my favorite in the entire world. But I do agree with the higher rating because it does have that element of like nostalgia for a lot of people, and it's fun to just get to see these characters in a new perspective, in a new position. And even if I didn't absolutely love like the plot or the way it was written sometimes, I still really enjoyed this book and it was really fun to read. So I do agree with the higher rating. And just now looking at my Goodreads, I did rate it a 3-star, which I think is a reflection of me kind of doing that balance. For my lowest rated books of the year, there was actually a tie between The Last True Poets of the Sea. I don't have it on me, so I don't remember who wrote it. I apologize. And then also the first book in the Truly Devious series by Marian Johnson, I believe. The Last True Poets of the Sea, I do agree with being lower, although 3.9 is not like a low rating at all in my mind. I ended up rating it a 2 out of 5 stars just because it was such a long book. I remember feeling like nothing happened. It was nice to read, but I kind of ended up dragging myself through it because I felt like nothing was really happening, and the things that were happening kind of were not accurate to what was described on like the back cover and everything. It just kind of went, like it started and then it just kind of went all the way off the tracks, if that makes sense. And so I finished it and I'm glad I did, but like I didn't really like it. So I do agree with that being the lowest rated book, and I actually also put it as the most disappointing book of the year because of that straying from the initial description. Truly Devious being one of the lowest rated books, I am actually surprised at because I absolutely love that book. I reread the entire series on audiobook in the past few months. I don't know. I just feel like there's so much to love that I don't know how it would get dragged down like that. I rated Truly Devious 4 out of 5 stars. The only thing that I can really think of is like sometimes I could see Stevie Bell as a main character being kind of frustrating because of the way she operates or the decisions she makes. But overall as a book, I thought it was really good. So I don't know. As an entire series, I could go on and on and on, and I will forever be grateful to my sister for introducing me to those books because the original 3 and the like extras I could just read over and over and over again. It's one of those comfort reads that I'll go back to forever, along with The Raven Cycle, which I also reread this year. My most surprising book I read this year, I also don't have with me, so I don't remember the author, but I do remember it was called The Perfect Child. This was another book that I ended up staying up really late to finish because it was just so insane. The description of it on the back is so vague, and it inches along like bit by bit, and each step you take into it is just crazier and crazier, and by the time you get to the end you're like, how did that even happen? How did we even get there? And I think it was purely for that reason that I was just completely confused in like a good way, like in an intrigued way, that I put it as my most surprising, because I thought it was gonna be kind of just a chill read, but it ended up being really creepy and like really weird and intriguing to read. So it wasn't like scary, but it was also like just insane, and I don't really know how to describe it other than that. So the next prompt is, what is your new favorite author from the year? And this, I kind of bended the rules a little bit, and I'm gonna say Stephen King from the book that I'm currently reading, Misery. I always knew Stephen King was a good author, like obviously he's popular for a reason, but I had never read one of his books because I was kind of scared that I was gonna like creep myself out and not enjoy his genre. But Misery, I've talked about a bit in some of my videos, and I actually really have been enjoying it. It is creepy, not scary, but like some of the things that are happening, I'm just like, I kind of like gotta skip ahead a little bit so I know what happens, and then I can go back and read the course of events. So I don't know what word would describe that experience, but that's how I'm reading this book. But it's also just so captivating, and like I just have to know how it ends. So hopefully I will be able to find more Stephen King books that are like along the same lines. Ooh, another one that I wrote down was the best book to screen adaptation of the year. And honestly, I stand by my answer from last year, which was the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. At the time that I recorded the last one, only a few episodes had come out. And at this point, I've watched all the episodes twice, and I still think that it was an amazing adaptation. But just to be a little different from last year, I'm gonna say the third Heartstopper season that came out. It honestly wasn't my favorite season of Heartstopper, but it was really good, and I really liked how it represented the books, but also kind of took its own turn in representing the story. And it was just one of those things that I had so much anticipation for, and was really excited to click play as soon as it came out. And I actually ended up like dragging it out over a few days when I really could have binged the whole season in one night, because I just enjoyed it so much. Felt like it told its stories in such an amazing way. So, and then last but not least, a prompt that I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by my answer. A book that you haven't stopped thinking about. I put the Raven Cycle series and the Truly Devious series, because obviously I reread them because I couldn't stop thinking about them, and I wanted to reread them during the fall time because they're such fall books in my mind. But I think I've talked about them kind of a lot at this point. So if you need me to say it again, please read them, but I'll leave it at that. Alright, and to wrap this video up, I wanted to quickly go over some of my preliminary goals for 2025 as far as reading goes. So I set my numerical goal at 12 again, just because I feel like it's basic and like now I know it's achievable for me. My hope is to read more, but if I can at least do 12, I'll be happy. Other than that, more of my goals are to read all of the book club books this year. If you're one of my friends in book club and you're watching this, feel free to hold me accountable, but please be nice to me because I don't always get it done. But I'm gonna really try this year, and if I do that, it will equal 12 books total. So I'll hopefully be working on those two goals at the same time. Once again, I said I wanted to try and read mostly new books this year, but also I'm completely open to rereading. I feel like that's an important part of the reading experience, so hopefully I can find a balance between that. And then also, continuing from this year, I want to try and keep reading the physical books that I own that I haven't read yet, because as you saw in my bookshelf tour video again, I have 2 shelves full up here that I still haven't read. So hopefully I can get on some of those. But other than that, I'm really open to whatever 2025 has to bring, and I'm just looking forward to reading more and hopefully talking to you guys more about books, because that has honestly been making me very happy over these past couple days. So I'm very excited. But honestly, those were all of the prompts I had written down. If you have any more questions or things you want to talk about, feel free to leave them in the comments below. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut myself off there. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any feedback or video ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments below as well. And while you're there, please consider answering the question of the day, which today is going to be, I think I'm just gonna copy my question from last year. And I'm gonna say, what was your favorite book of the year? If you can pick one. Obviously, I know that's hard. You already know mine. I said Solitaire, but there are so many good ones that I read this year that, I mean, you already know, I could talk about forever. So let us know what you're thinking in the comments below and we can talk about it. If you like this video and want to see more, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you again so much for watching this video, and I see you tomorrow for Vlogmas Day 11. We're almost there.